Becoming a digital nomad entrepreneur begs you to also not be the ugly American. It's so important to learn nuances of the different cultures of any country which you're choosing to become a digital nomad entrepreneur. Liz Sharma, my Portuguese teacher, talks about some of the quirks of the culture of the language in European Portuguese. Now, of course, you can live in Lisbon, you can live in Porto, and get away with very little Portuguese. I know Nick from Algarve Addicts has lived there for 20 years, 24 years. He will tell you he is not fluent because his wife is Portuguese, so he can always rely on her. He also tells you, though, that he knows he misses some aspects of being able to immerse himself in the Portuguese culture. Just being able to tell a joke or understand when other people are joking is one of the nuances about immersing yourself in the culture. Liz Sharma, my Portuguese teacher, says exactly the same thing. One of the quirks that she points out in one of her videos is the pronoun you. It's actually insulting to use the form, which is VOCE. It's actually insulting to use that when you're in conversation with people. For instance, you wouldn't say, "What can I get for you today?" Where would you like to go today? Say if you're in an Uber, you're in a taxi. Instead, they will actually use your name, the third person. Liz will say when she got into the first Uber when she was visiting years ago, the Uber driver actually said, "And where would Liz Sharma like to go today?" Instead of saying, "Where would you like to go today?" And this just goes on and on and on. Wherever you have the pronoun you, the Portuguese are going to use your name, especially in situations where they have access to your name. So remember that. It's a strange quirk. It's a grammar lesson, which I'm not going to get into, but you simply don't use in European Portuguese the word for you. It's important for us when we're looking and researching the whole idea of becoming a digital nomad, find out what you're going to be comfortable with, because if a nuance like this is too much for you to grasp, then live in a big city. Don't go, like for me, I'm not going to live in a big city. No way. I'm going to live where I can get on my bike all the time, basically have, swim and work. But yeah, for me, I'm not going to be living in a big city. To make a segue into Kundalini Yoga has the same nuances. When you're learning a foreign language, you want to be comfortable with it, because otherwise you can be embarrassed. You can embarrass the other person to whom you're speaking. There's going to be a lot of miscommunication and a lot of misunderstanding. Basic information when you're learning a foreign language is the way to start. Kundalini Yoga has some basics also. Kundalini Yoga is actually probably the most misunderstood yogas of any of the practices in the world. Fascinatingly, it is the oldest and the mother of all yogas. There is a practice called WHITE TANTRIC. I have taken an all-day class. It was murderous. You have to hold a position for 62 minutes. I thought I was going to die. Regardless, getting back to WHITE TANTRIC, there's also a red tantric, but it doesn't. It's like underground. It's an underground practice. I've never done it. I wouldn't do it. But just see, this is a cultural difference. Knowing in yogas, if I told somebody I took WHITE Tantric, their eyes always light up, because the red tantric is some kind of sexual, exotic practice, which I know nothing about. My point is that you want to make sure you're not miscommunicating with people. I don't want people to think I've done some exotic sexual yoga. I really don't. I'm in my 60s. I don't need to have that reputation. And that's why, relating back to becoming a digital nomad, learn some of the nuances about the country before you move there. So you were comfortable, the people around you were comfortable. Don't be the ugly American. Reflect upon the times where you've heard someone from a foreign country come to our country in the United States, and maybe you've witnessed somebody really get upset with them because maybe they just moved here, they haven't mastered the language, and you've seen people actually bear down on them and say to them, you're in America, you need to speak English. They have no idea what's going on with these people. So remember that when you're going to a foreign country. Just learn the basics so you can avoid being called the ugly American. We talked about wine, miscommunication. Believe it or not, wine has the same nuances. Many vintners in France are very big and driven to plant their vineyards based on the moon phases. This is highly controversial because it's difficult. When I was selling French wine, we were over in Beaujolais, and this young couple had just begun their vineyards and were doing everything by hand. They were planting by the moon. The reason you would plant by the moon is because it does have different aspects of the draw, like the tides, how they go in and then out and they're going out. The moon is what causes that. Yes, a little science lesson. Regardless, what happens when you plant by the moon, especially with vineyards, the full moon draws the moisture up out of the ground. So that's one of the reasons vintners who want to do biodynamic farming will do that. It's controversial. Most of the vintners say, no, it's a pain in the butt. However, if you want to experience some of the purest wines in the world, find biodynamic farmers. I'm happy to help you with this. Reach out to me. I know exactly where to find them. They're more expensive because it's an expensive process. To conclude, don't be the ugly American when you're trying to be a digital nomad. Learn the basic language. Learn some nuances about the culture so you don't embarrass yourself. You don't embarrass them. Most countries are really polite. Therefore, I would love for anyone who wants to become a digital nomad entrepreneur, put that in your toolbox. Learning the nuances, becoming more polite than you probably already are. Kundalini Yoga has lots of nuances about it. So if you're really looking to do a spiritual practice, I always guide you toward a link for Kundalini Yoga. Lastly, biodynamic wines are truly a find, some of the purest wines in the world. Happy to help you find them. Shoot me an email. You can even text me. I'm on Instagram. I'm everywhere. To totally wrap this up, I also teach online courses, Fear of Public Speaking. They're short and sweet, and they're actually fun. And it's part of my summer attitude with the podcast. I'm Valerie Hale. I create this podcast once a week to help people create a blueprint for the life they deserve. Merci, au revoir.